example. But the Mekong is a continental ASEAN. It's a thriving place until the debacle of the Myanmar crisis. So it does set back quite a bit, I want to say, the Mekong region. But aside from that, the momentum's still going. I don't think we are directly impacted by what's happening in Myanmar. Of course, ASEAN is still working to bring peace. Our foreign minister is a special envoy of ASEAN chair to work with the Myanmar government to try to find some peace. But again, it's a good example that, when we share our experience with Myanmar, it's a lot of things that need to sort of like, you have to ponder, you have to think, you have to, I would say, looking for a way to bring some solution. But I think for today, I hope that with all the intellectual in this room and throughout the world, I hope we can get your input, get your wisdom, get your interest, get your experience, so that we can ultimately formulate some sort of a policy recommendation, and from then on we can start nurturing this peace initiative. Bear in mind that this is the first event, is the first Mekong-Asia Pacific Forum. There will be other events, there will be the second, the third, the fourth, whatever. But this introductory meeting matter quite a bit. We like to hear from you. We like to have your input, and hopefully we can have the Secretariat can formulate a good policy paper or concept paper that we can further use for developing a larger holistic approach. How do we build peace? The topic for the subtopic for this event is focusing more on food security in the context of the war in Ukraine, for example. How a war that is happening thousands and thousands of miles away have a direct impact on food security, for example. So this is a good input that we can tackle. We also have a subtopic of small state diplomacy and hedging strategy. It's very important. Cambodia is a small state. We have to learn how to navigate, among the big power, and my foreign minister has been very, very clear that we don't want to take side. We don't want to take side. We have to develop our own strategy, hedging strategy. But again, being a small state is not easy. If you're a big country with a big economic might, you can say no to many people, to many countries. But when you're a small country, when you are it getting worse, the more the small state have to be very sharp in terms of their strategy here. So I think these are the subtopic, and the last topic, of course, is how do ASEAN experience in terms of peace building. What are the lessons learned? What are the things that we can do to use ASEAN as a platform generate more peace, not just for our region, but for the rest of the world. So I think basically these are 3 or 4 subtopics that we like all the participants, all the speakers, to share your valuable insight. Yeah. So on that note, I want to say thank you again to the ASEAN, Asian Vision Institute, to Think Tank 2022, and to all the speaker, the professor, the doctor, all the intellectual in this room and around the world, who took the time on a Sunday afternoon. I want to stress, on a Sunday afternoon, to come and spend time here. When today at noontime, I was rushing to eat and put on my...
Recording in progress.
My wife say, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to a conference." I said, "What? It's Sunday. You're supposed to be spending time with us. We're supposed to go cut our hair together." I said, "Look, haircutting can wait, but now I got to go to AVI." So thank you so much. Thank you. And have a good meeting here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for a very great warm welcome for us. And so here come to our first panel discussions, which the first topic will be covered on the school gardening and food security. And without further delay, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Lee Dana, the Program Coordinator of the Mekong-Asia Pacific Peace Forum, to moderate these sections. But first, let me introduce our moderator. Ms. Dana is the 3rd-year student of Rinsu Mekong ASEAN Pacific University, majoring in the International Relations and Peace Studies. She is an exchange student at the University of Hong Kong in the Politics and Public Administration. And currently, she is the secretary of the Association of Cambodian Students in Kyushu, a research fellow at the Engage Project, and a research assistant at AVI Think Tank 2022. So please welcome Ms. Dana, and the floor is yours right now.
Thank you, Panjapo, for a very nice introduction of me. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants from all around the world joining us online. We have a lot of support from many people from Asia Pacific, especially Asia Pacific region, and also distinguished guests here. And so now, yes, as His Excellency Dr. Phana mentioned earlier, we really appreciate you coming here in the Saturday evening from the US or in American continent, and also afternoon like in Cambodia. We really appreciate that. And so now I will start the discussion. First, I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Chamkit to the floor. Thank you.
I start first, right?
Okay. So first, I would like to. Thank you. So first, I would like to introduce short biography of His Excellency Dr. Rati. Professor Chamkit Rati is a medical doctor, science diplomat, director, historian with extensive experience in digital science and technology, global health diplomacy, nuclear technology policy, and executive education. He holds an MD, a PhD in education, and a PhD in history. He has published more than 100 scientific articles, edited 17 textbooks, and has been invited as a keynote speaker to conference more than 70 countries. He was a professor at radiology in Canada, Singapore, from US, Austria, Vienna Medical University, and Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Fukushima Medical University for 30 years. He was the director of the Division of Human Health at the International Atomic Energy Agency from 2008 to 2014, and he is currently the member of the board of ABI. Please welcome Professor Chamkirti. And our second panelist, I would like to introduce Professor Dr. Eng Sok Thi. He will be joining us online. He is an assistant professor of Human Development and Family Study at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He received his BS in psychology from the Royal University of Phnom Penh, MS and PhD in Human Development and Family Study from Texas Tech University, and later complete his postdoctoral fellowship at the University of California at Los Angeles. Dr. Eng research focused on his role of social capital in food sustainability, gender-based violence, remarriage, and remarriage. He also leads the Food System Working Group of the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resource at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, as well as teach undergraduate course in family community development. Dr. Eng found Home Garden Network program with the goal of obtaining food security, including family interactions and expanding social network in local communities through engaging family in gardening and plant education. So please, everyone, welcome Dr. Eng Sok Thi. I would start with a short introduction of our topic first. As you may wonder, this is a peace forum, but why do we include the topic of food security and gardening, and we even put it in the first agenda? So first, it is simple. Every one of you might consume rice here. Most of us, Cambodian, and over 35% of population of the world population consume wheat. So it is very simple. If there is disruptions in political order, in political instability, then it also affects all of us around the world. So that's why we include here, not only in the in our first agenda. So let me start with a short questions. I will start the introduction question with Dr. Sok Thi first. Good evening, Dr. Sok Thi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. It's very nice to see you here, and thanks a lot for joining us at 9 p.m. in the evening, Sunday evening. Very appreciate that. So from the brief introductions that I start earlier, so I have learned that one of the purpose of creating a home garden network is to encourage gardening and plant educations. So it's just a short question: what brought you interested in gardening?
Well, thank you, Dana, for your introduction, and thank you, ABI, for the forum. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to be also in the panel with Dr. Chai. Thank you for the questions. Grow rice, right, and plants, vegetable around the house. Growing up, seeing my father's, gardening, in front of the house with all kind of flowers, right. That was a big. I think I got a lot from my father. Actually, when he was a school teacher. But when he was a school teacher, he taught French and Khmer literature back then, and he actually integrates this, right? And so he would give extra credit to students, any student who brings, plans, he's interested, to grow at the school, right? So growing up was around the house, and that's something that got me interested in gardening.
Educational research. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
Okay.
No.
Is it good now?
Yes.
Okay. From your experience and also like from your research, why do you think plant education is important?
Right, the natural disasters, the diseases, just like the pandemic. Right? I mean, and right now with the climate change, all of these events, have taught us so well, right? And sadly, we need, the Ukraine war, right? I remind us, about the importance of growing our own food, right? It is very important, right, to young people, the families, communities, right, and the values of growing their own food, right. It's not just that, right? I mean, when you grow your own food, you learn about the values of nutrition, right? It's not just how quantities, but also the qualities, right? The knowledge and skills, what to eat, right? I mean, of not having enough food, I mean, some cases, right? But also, having a lot of food can also kill people, vicious food, right? So there are a lot of things that comes with, plants education, right? When kids grow kales, lettuces, right? They know the values of all these things. So it's very important, for food security.
Thank you, Dr. Soti. I do really agree with you that I think some of our people don't really focus a lot on nutrition knowledge and also plant educations, and yeah, we don't really focus on that, and I think it's very important for the national health for everyone yes, it's very important for everyone to learn this knowledge. This touch upon Dr. Rati expertise. I think he wrote something about food security also. Dr. Rati, do you have anything to add on food security? Or maybe you can give introductions.
If you want me to talk about food security, I will need 20 minutes. So maybe you should let him finish first, right? Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Sati, so do you think it is important? It's because I see you also initiate the home garden network also. It seems like you very a big supporter of self-sufficiency, plant self-sufficiency in the family. Yes, so why do you think it's really important for us to have self-sufficiency, planting instead of buying vegetable from the market, since we have variety of that?
Well, thank you for the question. The idea of creating home garden network is that's the big movement, especially on the community garden. U.S. people would have their own plots in the community gardens, and they would go and take care of the gardens. And I thought, for a lot of people, and especially if you work long hours, in a day, then it's almost impossible for you to, half an hour or 1 hour to drive to the community garden, lots. Right, and by having a home garden, that would be much easier for people to take care of their, and another idea that network is, because first of all there are like three main problems, right? First, that grow their own food, right? Or how to plant a garden, and second, if they know how to plant, right, to do it. I mean, when you ask people why don't you have a garden, they would say, I don't have time, right? And third, when they know how and the inspirations, right? I mean, if you have a big backyard or front yard, and it's just too overwhelming, right? To start gardening is not just planting, right? But you have to clear, right, the landscape, right? You have to clean it up, right? You have to weed our work. So I thought it would be helpful for create a network, a group of people who can help each other, right? So a group of friends or a group of family members, like relatives, 3 or 4 family coming together and taking turns, right, to help each other gardening whenever they're free, right? Gardening is very beneficial to the family. I mean, it increases social interactions, right? I mean, we are working so hard right now, and we have time to kind of spend with even our own family members, right? Let alone with our friends, right? And so gardening together, is a reason for people to get together, right? Evidence of our, from our research show that it increases, not only food production, right, that can save money, but also the social and family interactions. That's very important in terms of resilient communities, right? And you also see kids, right, putting away their iPhones, iPad, all of these digital devices to kind of touch, the soil, right, and talk to other, kids, peers, right? So I think, it's not just beneficial, in terms of food security, right, and saving money, but also, people get to know each other, recreate their bonding experiences with one another, right?
Right. I think I do agree with you, because I also do similar project at my university, leading university student to do gardening, but inside the community, community. It's also to increase interaction between local Japanese and international student. So I would like to move the topic a bit to the area of food security. Because I think it's very related to each other, home gardening and food security, very connected to each other, since home gardening educations, it's also promote help student to learn, have more knowledge of nutrition and knowledge of values the planting, which is help to improve to achieve food security also. Yes, I think.
Thank you. If I may add something to that, school gardening, I think is very important, particularly in big cities, urban. The kids, they don't know where the food come from. I've seen in some other country, modern city, they ask children in kindergarten, primary school, to draw a pineapple. And so they draw a slice of pineapple with a hole in the middle. So they got a pineapple from a can. So that's important. In Cambodia, you don't need to teach how to do gardening, because 80%, 85% are from the farm, from the countryside. Even they come to the city, they have experience from their parents, the tacit knowledge. And also, Cambodia tried to promote science and technology. If the kids start to do gardening, if you guide them properly, it's applied biology, applied technology. So they test the soil, humidity, during rainy season, drought, etc. So they learn and develop the critical thinking, how to use fertilizer and where to cook from. And when they grow up, they like trees. They stop going, they will not go and cut trees in the future. But they love trees and fruit when they're young. So all this has a scientific environment for teaching, but also some civic behavior. Gardening is about civic, respecting plot from other people, try to contribute, how the community can contribute together, rotating to water the plants. So all this has a fantastic, to me, is a tool for providing outside classroom teaching. Now, so to come to food security, thank you for inviting me. Actually, AVI invite me often. I serve on the board. When you invite, I said yes. And then I got very worried about this food security. I have no clue what is food security. I know more about nuclear security. But looking and peace. But looking back at my main advantage is the power of my gray hair. I'm also went through a lot of experience. So what happened? I work at the International Atomic Energy Agency. El Baradei, Nobel Peace Prize, interview me, and then the whole team asked me, "You're very qualified technically, but why you joined the IAEA? And you know that we have won the Peace Nobel Prize for that. Have you published anything about that?" So instinctively, I don't know what to do, but as a survivor, I told them, "Look, I never written any paper on peace studies, but having grown up during the war, I know what is the value of peace." And then I got the job. So when I started at the International Atomic Energy Agency, in my division, I have a section of nutrition, global nutrition, but we work also with another department which is a joint program between FAO and the IAEA. A lot of technology, but yet at the end of the day is how to improve crop, animal breeding, etc., feeding the world, environment, global change, what happened in the future. And I have some data here that I just found today about the very scary, for example, according to FAO statistics, currently 800 million of people worldwide are malnourished. That's a lot, and 400 million are in Asia. The rest are in Africa and Latin America. And certainly war and conflicts endanger food security, and conflicts also, climate change also. But before coming to that, I like to bring back some history, because we're talking about the Mekong. The Mekong is a place, is a region to grow rice and a lot of fish to catch historically, and we have solid evidence for that. The civilization of Angkor is based on rice and fish. And I see here, for example, you got mung bean, rice, and sesame here. It's just a coincidence, a study of ancient botany from the soil of Angkor and beyond. They found rice, mung bean, and sesame. So there's a tradition of using that as a source of food and for rituals. So that's one thing. The other interesting part is that because we do international relations, security, conflict are the result of consequence of history. So we need to know that. So what do we know from the region as a producer of food,
Dr. Rathe, may I ask you some follow-up questions regarding
no,
that?
not yet. Let me finish. Okay. So if you look into that, Zhou Daguan, the Chinese visitor in 1196-97, he spent 1 year. He described all of that. Cambodia, Angkor produce 3 to 4 crops of rice every year, floating rices, a lot of food there. And what else? Fish, a lot of fish. And in this part of the world, around the Mekong region, fermentation of fish was really almost a staple food in addition to rice. And in order to promote fermented fish, you need rice also. So fish plus rice plus salt, you get the pork. And fish plus only rice, only salt, you get the prahok. And the good thing that I found, I was very excited. Cambodia, for ancient time, we export our culture, culinary culture also. And we found out that according to Japanese scholar from Sophia University, they found out that fermented fish, the sushi of today, came from the nare sushi from the 9th century before the Meiji era, and is a expansion and a culture from fermented fish from the Mekong region. So we exported our culture long time ago, 1,500 years ago, almost 1,000 years ago. And the interesting point is that a Japanese scholar, a chemist, in 1908, Kikuda Ikunae, he found the umami, the taste, the fifth taste as described, and it comes from this fermented fish. So Cambodia and the region here, ancient time, have been part of the producer of not only ingredient for food, but also culinary tradition. And what else? So food is plenty unless it's disrupted by war and by conflict. And myself, I'm old enough that during the Khmer Republic, particularly the last 2 years, 1973, 1975, we got a shortage of food and food security. So because the city was surrounded by all the enemies of the republic, so the American had to drop rice and everything. So that's part where food security was an issue. So to come to this, now I like to share with you what I found, how war can affect food security. Probably that's your question.
Yes, thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
So I just have some follow-up questions. I'm wondering, since you earlier mentioned that over 800 million people are minorities, and 418 millions of them in Asia, if I'm not wrong. So I wonder why. So we have over 400 million people in Asia are minorities, which compared to which is even more than some the percentage of people who is in African, which is only 282. I just want to know your idea why
Look,
we are.
I would not answer this question because it's not the purpose of our talk. But what we know that when you have war and conflict, the undernutrition and increase. Yeah? So we found that I think you don't need to be a scholar to understand that if you have war, it damages crop production. You cannot go out. The guy enrolled in Ukraine, they go to war. There's no time to produce. And also, we know that in Ukraine and Russia, they produce a lot of fertilizer. So that's been disrupted. The energy price, we can talk about that, is more expensive, the cost inflation. There's a protection and the value chain of the food, of particular grains, from that part of the world that produce 70%, is causing a food insecurity in other regions, particularly regions that are totally dependent on the grain, like this eastern part of Africa, for example. Yeah? And lack of labor. You go to war. We know during the war in the 70s, I was old enough to understand that nobody can go because you have bombs, you have mines, etc. And so all this has impact on food production, food transport, and everything. And certainly on top of that, even if you can produce in some region, the logistic infrastructure has been disrupted. Getting out from Crimea to export is almost impossible with the war. And the long term, that break down what we call this food system. So when you look at it, I will stop here to take some more questions. Is that war, as much as it's happened now, it has always been a cause of a food insecurity. And when you look now, we stop and look at what happened in Ukraine and Russia now. There's a lot of narrative, conflicting narratives. Some people say Ukraine-Russia war. Some people say it's a proxy war, NATO proxy war against Russia. But all this come to the same result. But what is not new, but what is worrisome is that this regional war, local war, has immense consequence on the rest of the world, because the belligerents are using many other tools than just going to fight on the field. First, food has been weaponized, because you can negotiate with that. Russia on one hand, on the other, they weaponize food. And energy. Energy is very complex now. No gas. The economic sanction of NATO on Russia. Okay, Russia retaliate. We don't sell gas. I saw the news yesterday in France for the electricity production. They call that mega hours or what something. I forgot the technical unit, but the price rise from 80 euro to 1,000, and has been predicted that by the winter it will be 1,600. So all this affect all the food chain, all the production of food, because energy is not there. Technology also. So it's very complex. During what happened in the world now is very upsetting. The whole order, the whole logistics, the whole value chain. A fight and war of chips. That's one. Food, energy, economic sanction as a tool for war. It's known, and if you read, there's a recent book that has been published called The History of Economic Sanction as a Tool for War. And if you're a historian, you know that First World War, France, Britain used that against, later after the World War, German Weimar. Second World War, France, Britain, and against their enemy, using economic sanction as a tool for total war. Fascist Italy at the beginning used that. So the economic sanction, again, is the narrative. People can say that the impact on economy in the world is because of the war, not economic sanction. But for some scholars, economic sanction is actually the tool for total war. So with all this put together, you don't need to get a PhD to understand that when there's war, the production, the distribution, and the export of food or fertilizer, anything related to food production will decrease, inflation will come, and food insecurity will appear everywhere in the world, and particularly in countries that are more exposed, developing countries. But to come to Cambodia, and I will stop here. We have a big country, relatively, with a small amount of population. If we were to consider, like our colleague from abroad, that we should do some gardening, I think that Cambodia has many natural resources, traditional tacit knowledge of farming that allow us to be extremely resilient.
Recording in progress.
Without fertilizer, we don't have a overpopulation. So if there was something, Cambodia, and we have to look also, Cambodia can survive, but we have to look at the region as ASEAN also, at the Mekong region. If we were to negotiate, to talk together, and to be united, I think this region will survive the conflict that is worsening by the day over the next 3 or 4, 5 years. Nobody knows, but at one point, food insecurity will happen in anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rati. Yes, you mentioned a lot about war, that is connections like to food security. It caused like a food insecurity. So I think it's important for us to address this challenge, which is I think it's really related to promote like plant educations and also like school gardening. So Dr. Sati, this really touched upon your area of expertise on gardening. So So my question is how school gardening like have to achieve like food sustainability and also like food inequality during the crisis. Could you hear me?
Well, thank you. School garden is not new, right? I mean, we've been doing that, after the war. So, some schools are doing better than the other schools, right? And there are a lot of support, right? I mean, USDA, play a huge roles in terms of supporting agriculture, right? I mean, like a few weeks ago, they just funded another $25 million for agricultural improvement in Cambodia. Received a lot of support, through all of these, big agencies and, a lot of small non-profit organizations to support school gardens. But again, like I said, some schools are doing better than the others, and again, it depends on resources available to the schools, right? But what we need to do is to streamline this effort that can be applicable, right, to all schools, right, in the countries, right? I mean, as Dr. mentioned right now, is that Cambodian people have the knowledge and skill passed on from the parents, right? I mean, so it's that ready, to learn and to grow, right? But we need, a kind of a streamlining resources, right, to garden the movement, right, to be realized. I mean, even in the U.S., right, and it's just hard for government to keep gardens, right, sustainable, right. A lot of schools here in Hawaii, especially, I mean, the weather is very, good. It's just like it's tropical, right? But again, the garden is just so hard. It's not easy at all, right? It needs a lot of dedication, right? Right now, success because of different variables, right? I mean, it depends on resources. First of all, others, right? I mean, the teacher's interest or even the principal's interest, right? If the principal are building, school garden will happen, but will be very successful, right? So, and on top of that, right? I mean, on top of the maintenance of it.
Sorry, due to time constraint, I'm sorry. I apologize. I have to cut you off here, and it's very appreciates your topic of discussions earlier. So I would like to move to taking questions from the audience here. Due to time constraint, we only can take 2 questions from our audience here. So if anyone have questions, please.
It is interesting that from the perspective, you speak about school gardening, that sort of thing, and Morty, you speak on the larger macro perspective. I think yours is more on a micro perspective. But from our perspective, is that the Mekong region is very much an agricultural thing. So I think everybody in Phnom Penh have some land in the countryside. I mean, let's face it. So I think the issue you mentioned is more applicable to urban city area, which is not the case of Cambodia. Okay, probably more the case of Vietnam because population of 100 million people, it's quite a big challenge, right? But in the case of Cambodia, I would say. We do not feel the need to grow anything. I'll be honest with you. I have a land on the river, and we want to do some gardening, but you know, as an urban gardener, it's very tough because you spend your Monday to Friday at work, and then you go on the weekend to land. You really don't feel part of it, right? So I'm just saying, for example, right? So I think back to the question is that how do you in this context, how do we inculcate, right, that notion that we have to be self-sufficient, we have to be food sufficient. So irrespective of where we live, whether we have excess of land or we don't have excess of land because we live in an urban city, what would be your advice to find some equilibrium, you know, some equilibrium that we can be self-sufficient in the long term? Yeah.
May I know His Excellency? This question is addressed to Dr. Sati. So Dr. Sati, do you want to answer it now or take another questions from our audience first?
I can answer it now, right? I mean, the lack of space is, is one of the challenges, right? But even so, I mean, at Singapore, I mean, they're very good in terms of growing, their own food, on the rooftop, right? I mean, Singapore, urban gardens, right? Space, is also, it can be also opportunity as well, right? I mean, having a lot of lands doesn't mean that, we could, grows, but, think about resources that it will be used, right, to take care of all of those plants, right? I mean, waters, I mean, with the climate, hot weathers, right? And how much water you will use in, an acre or 2 acres of vegetable garden. Right? So, I mean, if you look into the Netherlands, right? Holland is a very small country, right? But guess what? The Netherlands, is one of the largest countries of vegetables, right? The green vegetable to the world, right? And what they do is to control environment, control garden, and control environment gardens, right? They use hydroponic, or aquaponics, right? With fish in it, right? On top of the just water. Right, and it uses very, very little water, right, and also again less fertilizers, right, and
Dr. Sati, could you summarize?
pesticide as well, right, because it's under control environment.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question from Dr. Kusal. Dr. Kusal, please.
I have. Hello, can you hear?
Yes.
I have an international relation question. Right? One of the studies by CICP last year, I read the report. The main problem with the Mekong, Lanchang Mekong cooperation institutional mechanism is that it's so much state-centric, top-down approach. Yeah. And when the studies show that the people-centered approach might be more beneficial, I think it's related to the question about food security. Food security is part of a broader human security. Traditionally, security defined as a state-centric international relation. But I think one of the important aspects of security, I think, should be broadly defined in the case of the sub-Mekong region. Should be broadly defined to include human security, and food security is part of it. So my question to you is, what would be the best, most optimal approach for the lower Mekong state, the smaller state, to deal with the food insecurity down the road? Climate change, the damming of the Mekong River, so I don't need to go on, the list goes on. But at some point, we are facing food insecurity. So what would be the optimal approach? I mean, not just the state, but also the other stakeholders, civil society, family. Even family is an important organ of Cambodia. I think we don't look to the state. After 1979, our family feed our family members, really. I'm talking about people-centered approach. So maybe your advice, recommendation for the lower Mekong state who are more vulnerable. China may, but they have a lot of resources to deal with food security. But in the case of Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, perhaps we are facing a much more serious problem. Sorry for a long question.
So this question is addressed to Dr. Ruti. Oh, can you
I have
summarize?
no answer to this very specific question, but I would direct you to publication at CDRI. When I was tenure there are some project on the Lower Mekong that would answer your question. I'm sorry because I'm not expert in that, but definitely at one point, talking to Dr. Sok Siphana, I think technology is one thing, policy another, but it's about attitude and education. And if you look at Cambodia, urbanization is so fast. What do you do on the weekend for people living in Phnom Penh? The parents, they bring their kids to the mall or to fast food in Bangkok Kong. That's very scary for somebody like me who has seen so many things. In the 60s, my father was an engineer in forestry, but at one point he was the director of fishery in Cambodia, and he was promoting eating fish because there were observations by that time, 1960s, that when you start to have extra income in the family, you move to eat red meat and drop fish. Well, fish is a staple food in Cambodia. So, and then I will rejoin my colleague there, is that attitude is important. This morning, I spent half an hour in one new borough where the developer, I cannot display the name, but they were bringing the 50 kids planting trees there in the borough. So that's a good start, because in the farm, all kids' attitude, they are self-sustained. You know? If farmers are facing insecurity because of conflict, but in the urban city, that's where we need to inculcate that concept that food is not about fast food, it's not about getting the food from the mall, but how to do that in your garden. And I cannot help but think of the French scholar Voltaire, 18th century. He said, cultivez votre jardin. It's a metaphor. Cultivate your garden. What does it mean? That mind your own business. Mean also in international relations, don't interfere with other countries, which is at the core ASEAN values. But you look into that, that is a way to educate children. It's so important to bring kids to nature. And to me, this is, if there was one message in food security here, is that don't forget to teach your kids that food comes from nature, not from the fridge, not from a fast food. And that's so important. It seems very simple, but if you change, this is about changing attitude, you make them responsible, that if you eat whatever fast food, look at what happened to the environment, the destruction of environment, injustice, social injustice, before you have that fast food on the plate. So it make them, thinking about civil society, as you mentioned, social justice, wasted of energy, climate change. All it come from all these small things. And if the kid know that how to protect their garden, they will be aware that every time they go eat something, they will look at what would be the moral and ethical value of that value shape before they come to their dish. So the attitude and the role of parents are important. Bring them back to nature. Cultivate your garden. Cultivate votre jardin.
Thank you, Dr. T. Dr. Sati, do you have anything to add?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Sok, for the question.
Sorry, please summarize it to
Great question. We are here together, right?
Could you summarize your answer in 1 minute due to some time constraints?
Sure, yes. So, yes, I mean, this is why we are here together, right, to talk about this topic. I mean, when we talk about food right now, we talk about food productions, right? And we tend to work in silo, right? From one another. It's about food as a system. That's what we need to do right now, right? Right. In one part of the food system is broken, it's disrupted. The system is also disrupted as well, right? When you talk about food, it's not just about production. It's about processing, transporting, right? Food safety, right? Food waste management, all of these things, together, right? The food marketing as well, right? I mean, the marketing right now, what we know is breast milk. I mean, the formulas, right? I mean, how, the marketers, try to make it as the best food, for the babies, actually, right? But, and people know, from all this marketing strategy that, that's probably the easiest way for them to do, right? So think about it as a system as a whole, right? So that we can handle all of these disruptions, right? The immediate disruption from the COVID, 19, right? I mean, it's a shock to the systems, right? At that moment, right? If we don't have that system ready, I mean, in place, right? And so, I mean, as a Mekong region, I mean, we should work together as a system, create, I mean, for school garden, for example, I mean, and the focus is just only food productions right now. Why don't we integrate all the systems, right? That's what we lack of. We don't have it right now, right? Let's go beyond production, growing food, but also teaching kids the values of technologies in the school gardens, right? How to create the water systems, right? And how to control pests, right? That's biology, right? Students will learn biology at the same time, and design architectures, right? And building all of this technology that water can be spread. That's science and technologies, right? We should also include the marketing, the economic aspect into the school garden. I mean, how to sell the products, right, to their community, for self-sustaining, right? I mean, kids need to know that, right? They need to feel that they are part of the larger world food systems, right? What they grow in school is not just for themselves or for the school or for the people in their community, right? They need to make themselves feel like they are part of the players in the food system, in the food security, right? The region, the Mekong region. I mean, this is opportunity for us, right, to work together, right, to build a system, right, that we can help each other when all of it just right now, right?
Thank you, Dr. Sati. So we have another one last questions from our audience.
Thank you.
So could you please introduce yourself?
Actually, it's not really a question. I just have some comments and some observation about our presentation. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Okay, got it. The first thing I want to share the concern with Dr. Kosan Park about the food insecurity in the Mekong region. And we talked a lot about the cooperation between Mekong members and concerted actions to deal with the problems facing us, even about the water security and food security. But actually it's not happening now, and we try to make it progress. So for me, I think that, the key to our solution is the political willing and political goodwill and transparency from even the upper stream and the lower stream. And of course, we are the lower members, like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. We suffer a lot. If something happened in the water flow, and it really have tremendous impact on agriculture. So food's relating closely to agriculture, and that's why agriculture and fisheries. So that's why I think we should show our political goodwill from the member state of Mekong regions. The second thing is about the school gardening, and I got along with Dr. Sok Siphana about the school gardening in here. For me, I think that this is an interesting initiative, but for me, it's not feasible. Even in Vietnam, Vietnam used to be agriculture, and we have a tremendous experience in agriculture and farming. But now, with the fast urbanization in the city, uh, we even do not have enough land for gardening. And we also need technology and money for this. For like an average income family, they don't have enough. They cannot afford gardening in the family at all. It's like the same with me, not like the lower income family. So that's interesting, but it's not feasible in the context of a small state like us. And it's easy in the United States, and so that is my observation. Comment. So so when you make initiatives, you should recommend some kind of methods for us to go, or how to scale up it. Because for me, I think it's gardening is kind of a very small scale in terms of food production. It's not enough to to afford a country. So maybe this is my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now it ends for I will stop taking the question from now. And thank you very much, Dr. Reti, for joining us, and also Dr. Suti from joining us from Hawaii. And also, so I would like to wrap up the sessions very shortly. So at the moment we touch upon so many small topics on food security. We address the challenge of food security, and from that we think that it's important for school gardening and to promote plain educations to address the challenge of food security during the crisis. And also promote school gardening, also promote students and younger generation to be responsible eating, and also promote nutrition knowledge. So I would like to end the session here, and very apologize since this is my first time being the moderator. I will come here in the place of Dr. Kamlong. He couldn't come due to some health concerns. Yes, and thank you, everyone.
So now I would like to say thank you to Dr. Reti and Dr. Suti for joining us today. And also to Ms. Dana for moderating this first panel discussion. So before we continue to our second panel discussion, we will have a very quick coffee break that will be served in front. So I would like to inform both online and on-site participation that we will be back in 7 minutes due to that we are running behind our schedule right now. I would like to inform that our next panel discussion will be start in 2 minutes. So once again, welcome back, and I hope you have enjoyed your coffee breaks. And right now, we will continue to our second panel discussion, and our topic will be focusing on the small states diplomacy and the hedging strategies. And I would like to invite Dr. Chun Boran Chanborai, the member of the board of AVI, and Doctor is also an advisor to the Cambodian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I would like to give a very quick introduction of Dr. Borai. Dr. Borai have received his PhD in International Political and Strategies Studies from the Australian National Universities. Doctor earned a Master in Public Management from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in conjunction with the Howard Kennedy School, and also an MA in Diplomacy and International Study from Rangsit University. So right now, Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. MC, for your kind introduction. Dear His Excellency Suhajara, the Secretary General of the Asian Cultural Council, Dr. Chiang Manrat, the President of the Asian Vision Institute, Ambassador, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to extend my appreciation as well to the two panelists in this session. My name is Chun Boran Chanborai. I'm very pleased and honored to be your moderator in this session. Our session is focusing on a small state and its and the foreign policy in small state in the fast-changing international order. You know, the geopolitical landscape in Asia has undergone remarkable transformations over the past decade, partly due to the expanding interest and increasing engagement from external powers in our part of the world, especially through the promotion of different sort of Indo-Pacific strategies. Indeed, the Indo-Pacific region has become a new center for geopolitical, geoeconomic influence and competition, and above all, it has become a primary battleground for geo-competition among major powers inside and outside the region. And the proliferation of Indo-Pacific strategies also put ASEAN in a very strategic dilemma. On the one hand, ASEAN is an important gateway between two important regions, the Pacific Oceans and the Indian Oceans. So ASEAN stands to benefit enormously from being the gateway, and of course from being a fulcrum of the Indo-Pacific region. But on the other hand, you know, the geopolitical competition among major powers in the region has also put ASEAN's centrality at risk. And ASEAN-led mechanisms like the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN Regional Forum, the ADM+, so on and so forth, might be marginalized. So as the Indo-Pacific strategies are being advanced, multilateral forums such as the Quad, Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, recently August, have been initiated and promoted. We are not really sure whether those multilateral frameworks can be the building blocks of ASEAN-centric multilateralism, and to what extent the ASEAN convening power is affected by those multilateral frameworks. And by and large, the Mekong, as Dr. Sok Siphana said, is also a subset of ASEAN. And the Mekong is not immune to the ripple effects of the broader geopolitical development. So with what is happening in Indonesia, the political dynamics over there have further complicated the geopolitical landscape in the Mekong sub-region. So the questions would be, how badly has the sub-region been affected by those developments? And how have small states in the sub-region like Cambodia affected and responded to the challenging geopolitical landscape of our time? And since the hedging has emerged as a popular, strategy in the security lexicon of the Indo-Pacific, we might want to know, is it really effective for small states in the region to navigate through the geopolitical turbulences of our times? So, to unpack those questions, we are very much fortunate to have two distinguished panelists joining us here at AVI and remotely from Hong Kong. So joining us here, I would like to introduce Dr. Pat Kosal. Dr. Pat Kosal is the Associate Professor of Political Science at Brooklyn College and International Relations Faculty Member at the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. He received his doctoral degree in International Relations from the University of Southern California. He is the author of Vietnam's Strategic Thinking During the Third Indochina War. It's a very fascinating book. I highly recommend you all to read. And his recent book projects focus on, one, the politics of asymmetry in Cambodia's relation with Vietnam and China. Two, the history of Vietnam's decade in Cambodia from 1978 to 1989. Another interesting project. I very much look forward to reading this new book. And joining us through Zoom, we have Dr. Han Ingje. Sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Dr. Han is an associate professor at the Department of Politics and Public Administration at the University of Hong Kong. His research interests include international relations of East Asia, China's relation with Southeast Asia, Southeast Asian politics, and ethnic politics in China. Dr. Han sorry for. Is it working? Sorry for the technical problem. Dr. Han received his PhD in political science from the Georgetown University in the United States. He also did his postdoctorate research fellow in the China and the World program at Princeton University. He's been a research fellow, faculty members at various institutions, including the School of Social Science at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, the East Asia Institute in Seoul, the National University of Singapore, Stanford University, and the International Security of East Asia at the University of London. So please welcome Dr. Han to the very first event of the Think Tank 2022. Well, I will spend.
Thank you.
Yep. I will spend around 30 minutes for panel discussion, and have the around 20 to 25 minutes for question and answer session. And during the Q&A session, I will invite around 3 questions from the in-person audience here at AVI. And if we have time, I will invite a number of questions from our audience following online. Now, I would like to start off with Dr. Han. What is your take on the geopolitical landscapes and, of course, strategic developments in the Indo-Pacific and their ramifications, to ASEAN and its member states, especially small member states like Cambodia? Dr. Han, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you to speak to the audiences, distinguished guests, and everyone at the ABI. So I got the questions, strategic developments in Indo-Pacific and the ramifications for ASEAN and its member states. And I think one thing that probably is ended by what the introduction was delivered, in a sense that was so much discussion about, so much mentioning of the concept of Indo-Pacific. For me, the simple fact that Indo-Pacific as a new concept has been developed in the very recent years, much in use and in some ways imposed from the outside, in some ways indicates that the decline of standard in its vocabulary in terms of how it can present its own understandings of security. Rather, all the terms have been imposed from the US and its allies from outside. So that's the first point. The second point, I think, is that many of the issues in the Asia, East and Southeast Asia region, obviously, has been mostly framed between China and the US for centrality, for hegemony of the region. And I think there are two issues now highlight, I think, for Southeast Asia. The first one, in fact, is Taiwan. And I really believe that rising mutual hostility between China and Taiwan, and plus the US involvement of the Taiwanese government with its defiance of Beijing's so-called red line for regional peace and stability. So the current brinkmanship tactics used between Beijing and Washington mixed in Taiwan. So on the other hand, South China Sea, on the other hand, security tension or being diverted away to Taiwan Strait, right? And partly, I think, this has to do with receptivity of regional governments towards Washington's pressure, as well as regional governments in Southeast Asia's receptivity towards Beijing's incentives, right? And so in some ways, Taiwan is much more so an actively currying, and Washington also finds itself in a very good position to be in the driving seat for what can be represented in Taiwan. And this might not be the case in Southeast Asia or for the countries who are for the South China Sea issue. So that's the reason why I think the tension across Taiwan Strait has the most potential to lead to hot war in East Asia, and also have obviously direct implications for Southeast Asia. Now, since we can anticipate, depending on the level of intensity across the Taiwan Straits, at least diplomatically, you will see more pressure from China for its to confirm the One China principle, but also to clarify that Taiwan is part of China. Previously, most of the China principle, basically there's only one China. I think the next step of diplomatic pressure would be the clarification that Taiwan is part of China. So I think diplomatic pressure for Southeast Asian countries will be on these kind of points. Similarly, US is also going to pressure ASEAN countries for Taiwan. And so I think this is going to be the major front line for much of the diplomatic battles. This is in a situation, obviously, there's no direct military confrontation. However, if there is a direct military confrontation, the internal divisions in ASEAN will be much more difficult to maintain. Internal unity in ASEAN will be much more difficult to retain. This is the scenario of directional force between China and the US, one. Now, if we use the analogy of Ukraine today, and I don't believe the same type of unity that we will see in ASEAN in comparison in EU. So the implications for ASEAN, if there is this such type of direct confrontation between the U.S., its proxy in Taiwan, and China, that will mean much of the internal division amplified, and then and I think the ASEAN members have to think of a way is to deal with subsidiary implications for the region. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Han, for highlighting a broader picture of the geopolitical environment in the Asia Pacific, with some regional hotspots, especially the ongoing tensions across the Taiwan Strait, and as you have alluded to, the tensions might lead to the hot war between the United States and China, and it might generate serious ramifications for countries in the region, especially for ASEAN and its member states. And ASEAN centrality is therefore very difficult to be maintained and promoted in such geopolitical confrontation between the two great powers. Now let me turn to Dr. Pat Kosal here and ask him to provide his overview on the broader geopolitical picture in the Mekong, and how the Mekong countries have confronted the security complexities and geopolitical fluidity as the result of what is going on in our part of the world, especially the increasingly sharpened rivalry between the United States and China over a whole of issues in this part of the world.
So I'm going to jump into the question right away. It's very difficult to talk about the Mekong sub-region without talking about the broader geopolitical context of the Sino-American rivalry, right? Obviously, Dr. Hans pointed out that this Sino-American rivalry is comprehensive. It touches on from traditional security issue all the way to technology and the management of the resources in the Mekong region. Right? So globally, we are seeing clearly that. I got a lot of questions about what are we talking about here? Is it a multipolar system, or where you have great powers competing? You multiple great power, multiple poles, or is it a bipolar system, meaning you have two superpowers competing, right? Two polarity. And my answer to that is no, it's not none of those, right? The system we are seeing now is in transition. It transition from a kind of multipolarity, a unipolarity to multipolarity, to a different types of system. It is a system I would characterize as dual hierarchy. One hierarchy is United States. United States dominates the world militarily. In terms of military technology, United States continue to dominate the world, right? It can fight many battlefields. It dominates in terms of military technology. So there's no question, even in the ASEAN context, many ASEAN states continue to look for United States for modern weapons. It's a saying, you want a Chinese money, generous aid, but you want a modern, sophisticated American weapons. Vietnam is a particular case in point. Thailand, the Philippines, and so on. So many states are looking toward United States for sophisticated military weapons, modern technology, to hedge against the potential rise of China out on the road. But at the same time, they're looking for generous aid. They appreciate generous aid from China. So what are we talking about here? So the implication of this dual hierarchy on the regions is clear, right? We can see that in the case of the sub-Mekong region now. Over the past decade, right? About 10, 12 years ago, the Mekong sub-region was kind of left alone, right? We could do the thing that we want. So regional state initiated interregional integration with China ASEAN +1, and so on. So many formulas of multilateral mechanism were in place and promoted by the Mekong state. But now we are seeing competition as well between the United States and China, right? I'm not going to bore you with all the details. So what we know, so China's Lanchang Mekong cooperation, and then the United States responded with the IPEF, right, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, following the Mekong initiative. Right. So basically, we are seeing competitions in the region between the United States and China. But I want to stress that in this competition, who has the advantage? Clearly, the United States has disadvantages for several reasons. 3, I would say. One is geography. Geography is destiny, right? If you look at the Mekong River, clearly that China has a chokehold over the resources because a major part of the Mekong River is part of China's national sovereignty. So it can build dams, and nobody can say anything about it because it is part of China's sovereignty. So no question about it. A lower Mekong River, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and so on, has to deal with this kind of fait accompli China's domination. Second is the question of connectivity. China has been able to do that through BRI, through its financial system and investment. China has developed this long-term cooperation, deliver tangible, concrete result. I just took a trip to Kampong Sam, so I got a first chance to see the expressway. So in October, we're going to travel from Phnom Penh to Phnom Penh to Kampong Sam in 2 hours. If you drive fast, you can reach there in 1 hour and a half. So that's a major, just to highlight types of China aid to Cambodia. This is nothing new to a student of history like myself. During the war, the Soviet Union and China competed for Vietnamese influence. I'm talking about they're fighting the same enemy, the United States. But the Chinese want to make sure the Chinese aid is intimate and long-lasting by building a type of teacher-students types of relationship. So Chinese aid oftentimes was sent in terms of manpower, skill, develop a kind of long-lasting relationship. So very intimate. They want to say that China-Vietnam relation would be intimate, not just in terms of material aid, but in terms of closeness between two comrades, right? I'm seeing this in Cambodia as well, and other countries like Laos. The Chinese want to make sure that their aid is more sophisticated and intimacy, in a sense that it's not just important, concrete, but also intimate. They're sending their technicians, they train the capacity of the country, and this aid attached to Chinese technical aspect, that you will continue to rely on Chinese aid down the road. Although it's not as sophisticated as the West. Another point is that I think the West tend to, this is a very important point, but those of interested students like myself, student of international relations, I think the United States and the West has been emphasizing the concept of self-interest. As you pointed out, Dr. Hans pointed out, it's a U.S.-centric, right? A U.S.-centric security approach, like, for example, the Quad. This is a U.S.-centric approach. United States now is no longer the only superpower. So it has limited resources. So it has to concentrate resources on strategic spot, location. 3 regions I want to mention. One is the Middle East. Second is the Indo-Pacific. By Indo-Pacific, we refer to 4 countries. South Korea, well, South Korea included, 5, I would say. India, Australia, and United States. Really, that's the main core interest of United States strategy. 3 regions, right? Middle East, the Indo-Pacific, and Europe. So Mekong subregion, I have to be honest with you, in my view, it's not that significant to the United States. It is part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. It's part of China's United States strategy to contain China. I mean, it's hard if you look at United States politics today. When you talk about China's threat, sub-region, the Mekong subregion is part of it. It's part of domestic politics. You have to deal with China's threat that really justify United States engagement, re-engagement with the Mekong sub-Mekong region. Just journey back into about 10 years, right? With the Obama administration, pivot to Asia, and then the Trump administration kind of disengagement, and now re-engagement. So to answer your question directly, I think it's a good time for small states to actually to maneuver, because there's a lot of more space now that the two superpower competing for there's a beautiful girl in this region, and they're competing for love, for influence. It's a metaphor, of course. And so I think this endures a hierarchy that no one dominates, no one superpower dominates. Small state has a lot more space to coordinate the activity together. But you have to coordinate your activity together. If Vietnam going on its own national interest, Cambodia's own national interest, they're going to do a salami strategy to Yemen. That's my response.
That's a very interesting point, and perhaps we have more time to discuss about small states and small states foreign policy and how we navigate through the competition between major powers. The interesting point that I would like to highlight from Dr. Pat Kosal's intervention is that the international order and the regional order, I might say, is not heading towards bipolarity or multipolarity, but it will be heading toward a dual hierarchy. A new term I will look up to for definition, and perhaps I will invite you for a cup of coffee so that I can learn more from the dual hierarchy. Dr. Pat provided a very optimistic assessments or positive assessments on China's engagement in the Mekong sub-region. And I would like to hear from Dr. Han as well. Do you share the same pessimistic assessments as Dr. Pat Kosal when it comes to China's engagement in the Mekong, bilaterally and of course through multilateral frameworks such as the Mekong-Langchang Cooperation or the Belt and Road Initiative?
Okay, thank you for the question. In terms of my assessment of whether China, whether there's any positive or negative development in China's engagement with the Mekong region. So I think the question you asked is in some way indicative of that, the identity of the person who asking the question, positive for whom, as well as negative for whom. This question very directly, because for different audiences, for different sort of audiences that have different identity of we're dealing with, then what is positive might be negative for that person, right? So that's why I really don't think that the sort of positive or negative descriptions in some ways is all a value judgment in itself. Now, in terms of China's engagement in the Mekong region, and I think previously Dr. Park mentioned it, and also I want to emphasize is demography. So when we think about China's influence in Southeast Asia in particular, and I think there are a few factors that they are, you might say, is to the advantage of China, but also of China. So one element of it is geography. So geography, in a sense, has this, let's say, pulling effect of lots of proximities, and also it's easier to build infrastructure to create regional trade. But on the other hand, I think many countries in Southeast Asia have a historical concern, and I think on that point it's mostly on the demography, in the sense that China, and in some ways also India, that they are so large in terms of the population, can easily dominate Southeast Asia in terms of demography. So that is basically a concern. So now I'm going to use a comparison, an analogy, right? So think about the U.S. relations with Mexico, U.S. relations with Central America. Now, think about it. Annually, there are 30 million trips between Americans to Mexico. Now, a country that isn't remotely close to that number is in Thailand. Before COVID, annually, that attempt to Thailand, that's only a third of Americans who visit to Mexico. Now, imagine that is the same scale population of China to the US. Now, if we do believe that kind of scale is representative, then so Thailand is 10 million, right? Times by 4 times 3. Then we get to 20 million of Chinese people are going to visit Thailand, and that is only one country. So this kind of demographic pressure transported to Cambodia or to Laos. I mean, particularly for Laos, right? I mean, think about Laos in terms of population in mainland Southeast Asia. So when Chinese business people, Chinese tourists, Chinese migrants, dominate in many aspects of it, in terms of, businesses, in terms of real estate, in terms of areas of the economy. And this is, in some ways, historically a fear of Southeast Asian nations towards Chinese people coming to Southeast Asia. So it's really have to be factored in how we understand China's engagement with the Mekong region. Now, more specifically, for the Mekong region in general, today, I think the most pressing issue is the domestic political chaos in Myanmar, for countries in the region. Now, for the Mekong region as a whole, probably for Cambodia is not directly affected as much, but neighboring states of Myanmar, China, and also Thailand is at the forefront of long border Myanmar. So, in some ways, then the political spillover effect from internal political sort of chaos and civil war will lead to refugees from Myanmar. To a much less extent will go to China, but most of them will go to Thailand. And I think this is a contingency plan already happening in Thai government to deal with rising number of refugees coming from Myanmar. So this is definitely a regional.
Thank you very much, Dr. Han.
Thank you.
I think I have to cut off your intervention due to time constraint. As you mentioned, there have been anxieties and even fear and concern over China's engagement in the Mekong. I think it is natural to have such anxiety and concern, simply because China is a rising power. Sheer size alone concerns us pretty much. And China has also increased its, economic weight, political influence across the region. But whether we like it or not, we have to deal with China as a rising power. As all sayings go, we can change friends, but we cannot change neighbors. So the Mekong countries, one way or another, have to deal with China as their neighbor. And so I would like to turn my question to Dr. Pat Gosal about hedging strategy. It is believed that hedging strategy can have countries in the region, especially small states like Cambodia, to better and more effectively address the rising China. So what is hedging strategy, by the way? And how important is it for small states like Cambodia?
Well, first of all, the concept of hedging strategy is not a secret. I'm not the author of that. Many authors of hedging strategy. It's a buzzword, hedging. So what it is that you buy an insurance just in case the house is leaking, right? Or you're planning ahead, a fallback position. So it's not that hard to understand. In fact, it's based on a realist concept that rational actor, if you're small, right, you don't want to make enemy with a rival power. So you want to keep both great power happy, the middle power even happier, so that we can have multiple relationships. Okay? So basically, you're buying an insurance just in case on rainy days you have something to fall back on. So there are many variations of that. I'm not going to bore you with the same. You can read about it. But I'm going to offer you something more juicy, more interesting, just for food of thought. And I thought of the Qingwa here, so I'm a little, make sure I use the animal analogy, so I have to look. You use the term poisonous shrimp, right? But you're small, you want to be a poisonous shrimp, so no one want to eat you, because poison. And you respond, say, no, you prefer a cute shrimp. Right, cute shrimp, because if you're attractive, it's great. You got more friends, more special relationship. Now I'm going to, right, so it's late in the afternoon anyway, so I'm going to entertain you. No, in all seriousness, I think that when I think about small state strategy, I've been thinking about this for some time. And I said, where would be the place I can go to look for new ideas? I look at the animals, just like you guys, as a metaphor. I'm going to give you 4 types of animal, have different strategies to deal with the dominant power. I have to read to make sure that but there's terminology that I should not say, because in the animal kingdom, as you know, so I'm going to try to civilize the animal kingdoms. So the first one called deterrent signaling. Fiddler crab. You know how fiddler crab has very small but big claws. They like to show off their claws, right? Why do they do that? They spend an enormous amount of energy to develop big claws. Think about North Korea. Why they spend so much money on parades every year, show off the weapons and testing the missiles? Because they want to show off their claws, the power to deter the United States from invading North Korea. So that's just to give you an example. So think about a fiddler crab, small body but big claw. You want to develop, don't mess up in me, I'm going to show. I would say that in reality, Vietnam has developed a kind of that strategy. Yeah, they're small, but no country, right, in Vietnam's history for 2,000 years was able to repel the Chinese invader, later on the French, later on the Americans, and then later on again the Chinese, right? So big claw, big resistant power, right? And the second animal took a different approach, not show off the big claw, but showing being different, right? I'm thinking about the cuttlefish. Anybody know the cuttlefish, the cute cuttlefish? The small male cuttlefish. They use their identity disguise and playing different, right, to the bigger dominant male cuttlefish, the fish. Okay, so first a small male cuttlefish can disguise itself as a female one, fake your identity, being weak, right? Signal to the dominant one as being harmless to the dominant male, so that it can avoid harassment by the dominant male cuttlefish. So it's just small, tiny female, because the big one dominating all the female cuttlefish, right? So this little guy coming in, pretend to be a female, okay? And yet the small one managed to unsuspectingly have a special relationship with the female, one of the female cuttlefish, without the bigger one knowing. Okay, think about it. Difference, right? So you resist, but you can also play difference. So the bigger one say, well, you're not a threat. That's okay. That's fine. But you're smart, so you can still have special relationship with the people in the kingdom. So, and the third one, rules breaking. This is a small male beetle, the little insect, right? The small male beetle, instead of fighting a losing battle, they mine their way, right? Zigzag their way through the tunnel, they dig a tunnel, coming beneath the guarding male, and go straight down to have a special relationship with the female beetle. They spend so much time, days and weeks, just to zigzag avoid the male, right? The big male, big claw, just guarding the female. So the little male beetle was able to manage to have a special relationship with the female beetle. Okay, I'm almost done. The fourth one is the underdog's sneaky tactics. Ram, like a deer, right? Called coursing strategy. This is really important, relevant to the Mekong sub-region. Coursing strategy, in this social hierarchy, remember I talked about hierarchy and asymmetry? The underdog, small rams would do whatever it takes to evade the defender, the dominant ram, okay? So they use the bulk and weight of the size and the weapons of the ram to basically outrun them, let them run in two different directions, and finally they got tired because they big, right? So they lose out. And then the smaller rams try to get together and coordinate the cooperation. I'm thinking about Vietnam, Laos, used that in the past during the colonial period. We band together to oppose, to a formidable resistance to the bigger power. So this requires small state using coursing strategy to get the big guy to thrust or swing in a different direction and then take advantage of that because they're more agile. Small ones are more agile, are more flexible. So I give you 4 types of animals to think about while you're going back home. I don't know how to do that, which one, because it depends on the situation. This is the coffee will come next.
Definitely, yes. After hearing this, I must invite you for a coffee or perhaps beer so that we have more time for discussion. I would like to raise a similar question to Dr. Han with regard to what should be the best strategic options for countries in the Mekong to address the evolving and of course fluid, geopolitical developments in the region.
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. And so in some way, it's hedging out in academic literature. And I think most of this research on hedging in some ways give a lot more leeway for smaller states to manipulate and play both sides for their benefit. Now, one of the main, how to say, the scenarios that occurring in the context of great power competition. However, that kind of optimal outcome only occurs in situations with manageable tension between the great powers. When you reach a breaking point of bifurcating such relations, then to play the hedging role would not necessarily be likely. And in some ways, options of smaller states will be constrained thus against us kind of mentality. So good examples of that would be looking at current situations of Russia, war in Ukraine, and the West has used economic sanctions on Russia, and basically sanctions all the economy could deal with Russia. So if this is a situation that occurring in Asia, let's say there is going to be mutual sanctions between you, kind of decoupling of relations, then how economies in Southeast Asia would be able to manage their autonomy because in a sense, if you deal with one, then you will be sanctioned by the other. So this kind of situation basically led me to basically to talk about this situation in the sense that if there is this kind of worst case scenario, direct military confrontation, and relations between China and the US. And I think ASEAN countries, in some ways, should already have a contingency plan of what exactly is going to happen. And I also, as I mentioned earlier, I think there is going to be a tremendous amount of internal division within the US and the other countries to China. So this kind of picking choices probably is already in the making. And I think in the region should by now have some kind of contingency plan of what exactly they will do if things like this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Han. And I think you have to agree with me that it was a terrific panel discussion in which our two panelists have shared with us so many issues, especially the biggest and most puzzling questions of our time. And I think this might spark a lot of questions from the audience, both here and online. And without further ado, I would like to start the question. First, I would like to invite the questions from the in-person audience here. 3 questions only because of the time constraint. So please introduce yourself briefly and ask the question, one question only, which is short and concise. I think Ratsmay from CICP first, and then DG Samnang, and after that, a young lady over there. So we have 3 questions from the audience here.
Thank you, Dr. Boray. My name is Him Ratsmay, Research Fellow at the Cambodian Institute for Cooperation and Peace, CICP. ជាបឋមសូមគោរពអាដាមសុយារាហើយសូមអបអរសាទរអាដាមបេសកកម្មការទូតមមាញឹកហើយសូមជូនពរអាដាមក្រុមការងារជោគជ័យបន្ថែមទៀតបាទ Thank you very much the panel for interesting discussion so far. I have many questions, but Dr. Boray only allowed 1 question, so I have to direct my question to Dr. Patkosal. My question is as follows: Can the Mekong country adopt all the 4 strategies that you mentioned earlier? maybe I have to write a dissertation about that. Huh? If yes, how, and if no, what the best policy option that the Mekong countries should do? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rasmay. It's a very broad questions. Yeah, but I trust Dr. Parkasar. DG Tien Sam Can you have the mic, please?
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. My name is Tien Sam Nang, President of the National Institute of Diplomacy and International Relations. Having heard from the insight presentation by the two speakers, I would like to address my question to both of you relating to the superpowers rivalry. You already mentioned that about the small country strategy, how to navigate through this turbulence. And my question is, if you were able to speak to the policy advisor of the United States or China or any other superpowers, and what you advise for them to direct their strategy toward ASEAN, as ASEAN is bound by its charters, solidarity, consensus, non-interference, and also by TAC. So it is not convenient at all to divide ASEANs. You see that if the world divided, there's a huge loss of resources in terms of raw material, in terms of economics, and even arm race competition. So there is no gain at all. It's just a zero-sum game. So this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Tien Sam Nang, for the question. Last question, please, from our young lady back there.
Thank you, Excellency, for the floor. Good afternoon, Excellency, and participant here. So my name is Mui Kim from Cambodia Development Center. First of all, thank you for the elaborative discussion. So in relation to your discussion about the superpowers involvement in the Mekong sub-region, as we can see that there are like new initiatives like the US-led, Japan-led, South Korea-led. So in your opinion, what do you think is the role of the Mekong sub-region in maintaining peace and security in its own region, as well as in a broader region of Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific? Because as far as we know, the ASEAN has been lauded as the driver's seat in maintaining the peace and stability. So how about the Mekong sub-region? So what role does it play? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the three wonderful questions. The first question from Rasmay related to the four strategic options in the hedging strategy. I have to break the rule by allowing you to have the last question.
Okay, so very concise.
But this is the real last question.
Actually, due to the time, but I really have some comments on your presentation, both of you. But my very concise questions to you. In your opinion, do you think that Mekong sub-region should be included with the ASEAN agenda? ASEAN agenda. ASEAN agenda.
Agenda. Okay. Should the Mekong
included in the ASEAN agenda? Yes.
Should the Mekong sub-regional cooperation frameworks be included in the agenda of ASEAN? Okay. Okay. I can break the rule for the second time. I'm sorry, Ambassador. Okay, so now we have 4 questions from Rasmay to Dr. Parkasar related to the 4 options in the hedging strategy, whether the Mekong countries can implement all those 4 options. And we have questions from His Excellency Tieng Somnang, to our two panelists related to what is your advice to the great powers in their engagement in ASEAN? You know, dividing ASEAN is not in the interest of ASEAN and ASEAN member states, and it is not in the interest of the major powers as well. So what is your recommendations and advice? The third question from our young lady from I think CDC Center, on the role of the Mekong countries in maintaining and promoting regional peace stability in the Mekong sub-region itself and in the broader region, especially in ASEAN. The last question from our colleague from the Vietnamese embassy in Phnom Penh related to the Mekong in ASEAN. Should ASEAN include the Mekong issues as its agenda? Thank you. I think the question go to both panelists or both? Okay. So please provide your brief answers to those difficult questions. We have 5 minutes left.
Okay, so the answer to Rasmai's answer is yes, but I think we need many more hours to go into to that. What I'm saying is that the competition between United States and China now is kind of open up space for small state to maneuver. I mentioned that earlier, right? So you can have, you small state, you can have many relational circles, right? Small state like Cambodia can have relations with South Korea without having to annoy Beijing, right? You can have a relationship with Vietnam, although Vietnam is inching closer to the United States. Cambodia inching closer to China, but you can still have intimate relationship between Vietnam and Cambodia. And so you can have, in this sort of asymmetrical and dual hierarchy, small state and middle power can have many relational circle, a special relationship. That's why you see all these terms. You have a relationship without all-weather relationship between Pakistan and China, right? Close relationship between Cambodia and, I forgot the term already. Saying is you can have many relational circles, and this strategy, you can have grand strategy, but grand strategy are static. What you want, the big goal, right? National sovereignty, national interest, those are the known core interests. But I think tactic is where, Your Excellency from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would have to improvise tactics. Tactics are very important. This is very agile, very tactical. You have a strategy, but you need tactics. What I'm talking about is tactics. But in order to have a tactic, you have to have a ministry that have strong diplomats. Our diplomats are not who are multitasking, who are doing both cultural, economic diplomacy. And I think that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Cambodia are doing that in response to the cutting of EBA and kind of try to diversify. So I'm not going to bore you into that. My short answer to that is yes. But you got to have human resource and the talent to do so, and the political leadership that allow those talents to manifest themselves. And that's a hard thing to do. And the second question to His Excellency Tin Som Nang, I would say my advice to Beijing is that think about shared interest, do more. United States too. If you think about great power, you think about your self-interest, all related to U.S. or China-centric. You're not going to have a long-lasting relationship with the sub-Mekong region as well as the ASEAN region. So my advice to them would be construct shared interest. Shared interest with the emphasis on interconnectedness between countries in the Mekong River, right? We talked about that already. Emphasize that your interest also my interest. You hear a lot in terms of discourse representation. When I visit China, people always talk about common destiny. What do they mean by that, right? Win-win cooperation, great terminology, but I think you need to translate that into action, right? That's important, shared interest, not self-interest. I think if they can do that, they can build long-lasting, intimate and important relationship with the sub-Mekong region. And my quick short answer, I apologize for this, to our friend about the role of the sub-Mekong region, as well as our friend from the embassy. I said, yes, absolutely. These should be part of the agenda, but I would leave that to the policymaker to make decision. I am not a policymaker, but I would say that it's part of that. ASEAN is so much top-down approach, right? So my top-down approach, I think you need to include other stakeholders, including civil society as well, to deal with sort of non-traditional security issue. And therefore, the sub-Mekong region is part of it. I think the previous presentation really touched on that already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Han, you have 2 minutes to respond to the 4 questions, and those are tough.
Okay, so I think fundamentally, options for small states depend on depending on the nature of the competition between the U.S. and China. Whether that competition is zero-sum, I think if it is going towards zero-sum competition, then options for smaller states actually are much less than you might think. Interest centrality is in the interest of China and the U.S. And I think ASEAN centrality is in the interest of China, because ASEAN centrality is the rationale for China to keep the U.S. out of the region. So that means ASEAN centrality, I think, divided ASEAN, and in some ways, you can see clearly in the case of Myanmar that there are a lot more trying to get around ASEAN to do lots of things the U.S. wants in the region. So I think if we really want to try to emphasize ASEAN centrality, in the sense that your initiatives and policies should not be dictated from I think the U.S. is going to bypass ASEAN centrality in the years to come.
Thank you very much for a very dynamic, vibrant discussions. I have also received a lot of questions from our online audience, but I have to apologize for not being able to entertain those questions. I therefore have to wrap up this session without any remarks, but a request to our audience here and online to give a round of applause to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Han from Hong Kong and Dr. Pat here, for this enriching session. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Dr. Kusal and Dr. Han, for giving a very great panel discussion on this topic, and also thank you to Dr. Borai for moderate these sections. So now we have come to our third panel discussions under the topic of the ASEAN way of peace building. And this panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Nguyen Phan Phakday, the Director of Center for Cultures and Peace Study of AVI. And the other field is in research are in computational architectures, computational geometry, and image processing with main application in cultural heritage. So, Doctor, the floor is yours right now.
Thank you, Ms. MC, for the introduction. You might hear that I'm quite a foreign here, foreign background, but it's an honor for me to be part of this event and moderating the panel discussion 3, which is on the Asian way of peace building. And for this session, I would like to welcome two panelists. The first one is Dr. Pat Butsodari, who is currently a freelance consultant and a lecturer at the university in Cambodia and Afghanistan for over 20 years, since 2021. He has worked as an advisor to the Ministry of Commerce. Before joining the Ministry of Commerce, he was a former assistant professor of Public Administration at the American University of Afghanistan. In Afghanistan for 7 years. And in mid-2019, he returned to Cambodia and started his job with the government ministry, UN agencies, and policy think tank organization as a senior researcher and a national policy advisor. His interest is span across the field of peace building, rural e-commerce development through digital transformation, trade, facilitation mechanism, impact assessment of COVID-19 outbreak, agricultural trade policy, and ASEAN integration. So welcome Dr. Put Sodari. I think he joined online. How are you, Doctor? Our second.
Thank you very much.
Please, sir. Please, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome. Sorry that I cannot join in person.
Thank you so much, sir. Our second panelist is Dr. Pau Sapong, who is a full professor in the Department of Policy and Politics and Public Administration at the Toronto Metropolitan University. He is also a former president of Science and Peace, based at the University of Toronto, Canada. Dr. Sapong is currently a member of International Country Expert Network on UN Peacekeeping. Very much suited to our event here. His research and teaching interests are generally in field of global peace and security study and comparative politics, with specialization in global governance, security, and democracy study, with a regional focus on Asia Pacific region. Welcome, Dr. Pau Sapong. Thanks for joining us online. So to start with, we are talking here, we are discussing here about the Asian way for peace building, and with a focus on what is the ASEAN approach towards peace building, conflict prevention, and conflict resolution. So my first question, I'd like to learn, and I'm sure that our audience also would like to learn from you, what actually is ASEAN way means to political science like you, Dr. Pau Sapong. Can you please clarify? Thank you so much. The floor is yours, Dr. Pau Sapong. Can you please unmute, Professor? We do not hear you, sir.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this special event. Regarding the question of the ASEAN way, from my perspective, it's quite unique in the sense that it has been a top-down, state-centric, non-interventionist, informal rather than formal, play on a lot on dialogue, socialization, negotiation, but also there is some kind of formality or more peacekeeping, and also international law is part of it. A lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue, a lot of negotiations, track 1, track 2. But it does not really deal or seek to address problems based on human rights and democracy promotion. And I would say that it is informal in the sense that it does not focus on the importance of institution building. ASEAN way is not is unique in that way. I can elaborate on it. You know, in terms of conflict resolution, in terms of conflict prevention and peace building, and all of that.
Thank you, Dr.
If you would like me to elaborate on.
Thank you, Dr. Sopong. I think I heard many positive points, actually, the ASEAN way, but I also heard that it is also about a self-interest at the first stage. Is the ASEAN way, is what I heard. Is this as to you? Could you please share your experiences on how ASEAN way, which is putting the first interest in the front, still the one of the solution or one of the attitude to bring peace in the region?
I'm not sure what you try to say here. Can you repeat, please?
The role of ASEAN for peace. Can you please elaborate that, please?
It's so difficult to answer that question. As I said, you know, initially dealing with conflict is to take a more informal, non-institutional approach by policy instruments such as dialogue, diplomacy, negotiation, you know, conferences, and ASEAN, and more recently, I would say, you know, the aspiration from ASEAN into a regional community in the context of politics and culture. So the ASEAN aspiration to develop security community, an economic community, economic community, and social culture. It's a process of regional integration, but all this done by, you know, a lot of discussion, a lot of meeting, a lot of planning, but it's not really in the sense that ASEAN does not really aim to build a strong regional initiative, for instance. It's just that. The ASEAN Secretariat under institutionalized, it's not really like the European you know, community, which is heavily institutionalized. So as I said, it relies a lot on dialogue and socialization and meeting and things like that. From my perspective, ASEAN as an organization, as a regional organization, seeking is still at the early stage and has not progressed quite well from my perspective.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Persapong. My next question goes to Dr. Tatpot Sodari. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
I've read from your background that you are interested also. You are also expert in democracy, and the question would be: peace. We are talking here about peace and also linked to democracy. What do you think? Does peace building democracy, or vice versa? It must exist democracy first, and then come peace, or the other way around? Dr. Pat Potsadari.
Yep. Thank you very much for the question. Before I give detail, let me about the concept of peace. When I read the workshop, it's called Mekong-Asia Pacific Peace Forum. It sounds like to be peace geopolitically travel and diffuse to different continents. So now can be, built from different perspectives. So for example, when I work and taught in Afghanistan, when I write a book, it's published already. I discuss a lot about the neoliberal peace. There are 4 key principles in order to build peace. My argument is that peace can be from democracy and human rights. That is the second one. The third one is economic liberalization that can build peace. Last but not least is good governance. The 4 key tenets of the neoliberal peace. Otherwise, we also think about that thought, model by, jihad network like Islamic State, for example. And in Afghanistan, also bringing peace related to tribal setting peace. So within this neighborhood peace, it's also jihadist peace, Islamic peace. At the end of the day, the outcome of the peace is called positive peace, like, from a Cambodian experience that I can answer later on. So the thing that different types of peace, influenced by ideological hegemony, that means that there's no, but there are many ways of interpreting, making sense of the peace. So in this case, respond to the question, create peace, or peace create democracy. So I want to talk this to the Cambodian experience and also Afghanistan experience. Let me start with Afghanistan experience. When I lived there, influence of the NATO forces and the new ideological hegemony from neoliberalism system within the government. So after 21 years, the democratic government that tried in 2021. So for Cambodian, as you can see, after the peace agreement, Cambodian peace also embodied with the democratic peace as well. Also, we enhance human rights, adopt economic liberalization, free market economics, and also the good governance also still exists. So you can see that positive peace planted in Cambodia. So this means that the peace doesn't, planted in the country where there's ideological contesting from different perspectives. So this is what I can elaborate in detail when the question comes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Potsadari. So the next question, because I have seen also your background is on agriculture, I think allow me for a cross-session question, which is about ASEAN way plus agricultural industry. I think what can we learn from you in your experience on ASEAN engagement and policy for agriculture and that create peace? Right? Can you please, Dr. Putsudari, can you please share your experience on that?
Yeah, thank you. It seemed to be that two concepts integrated into. If we look at the Asian engagement, now I'm working with the OPSWAM. It's called in-country. What I did is try to develop a strategic roadmap how, Cambodian policy and Asian together in terms of fair finance, in terms of gender, in terms of technology. Referring back, as you can see, Asian can integrate in terms of global value chains. How integrate into the global one value chain. For example, as you can see right now, into called ASEAN, what we call a regional comprehensive economic partnership. So Cambodian benefit from that as well. Asian in term integration in terms of trade, which include agriculture sector as well. I can the GDP, tax revenue, employment, etc. later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Putsudari. I think let's discuss a little bit about ASEAN way relevant, if it's relevant or obsolete in the context of fast changing international order. Dr. Sotapong, what do you think about this point? Is it still relevant, ASEAN way?
Yes, I would say that the ASEAN and not obsolete, but inadequate. I would say that inadequate. Like have states in Southeast Asia to develop community, some form of collective identity. ASEAN leaders, ASEAN as a family. I think that's good, and it relies on a lot of that, as I pointed out earlier, on dialogue and discussion and interaction and things like that, as a way to build a collective identity. So I would say that this is good and important, especially when quite a few members countries are not having domestic problems, political problems, and things like that. So almost all the ASEAN members are, with the exception of Indonesia now, I would say. So even the ASEAN states are not really democratically institutionalized. So you cannot, rely on formal policy or institutions. So you need to take a more incremental approach, and I think this is another characteristic of the ASEAN incremental approach. Peace building, slowly, confidence building, assurance, mutual assurance, and things like that, which is important. Fully stable, but I would say that ASEAN, I have written extensively and recently on ASEAN as a security community, but I would say that ASEAN will never lead into a regional community. So in that sense, it's a question of sustainability. Can ASEAN move to the beyond aspiration to be a regional community? I would say no. ASEAN does not have the ability, countrywide and regional and regionally, to really develop to be transformed into a real, stable, sustainable community. ASEAN just has so many problems. Countries' domestic problems as well. Myanmar is the best example at the moment. It has affected the way so I would say, unless ASEAN as a region moving away from being top-down, state-centric, more toward people-centered kind of approach on human rights and democracy as well, the region will not be sustainable in terms of its ability to promote cooperation and peace and harmony. So in that, I would say that the ASEAN approach to peace building is quite illiberal, and in contrast to regions like Europe and North America, which the regional communities in Europe and North America are quite institutionalized, and in that sense, an illiberal approach is relevant, is important, but toward the next step, and it has a lot of problems, domestic problems, and for me, even with the lack of respect for human rights and democracy. So relevant but inadequate, not sustainable. And as a result, ASEAN remains vulnerable to geopolitical conflict and potentially can even, but I wouldn't go that far.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sopong. I think just we have learned a lot from you, and here your suggestion is to focus on people-centered approach and promoting identity, respect each other by nation. Thank you so much, and I was told to, because of time constraints, to open the floor for questions here from the physical meeting. First Dr. Vandet, and then you.
Thank you very much, and my respects to Professor Sopong Po. I wish we can meet soon, and colleagues, Dr. Tutri. I have two questions. First, with regards to the enlargement of ASEAN. So definitely next year, Timor-Leste will become the member of ASEAN. So if you could give us your assessment on the value adds of Timor-Leste in the ASEAN family. My second question relating to your assessment on the role of ASEAN with regards to political kind of resolution and peacemaking in Myanmar, and also the role of Cambodia as a chair of ASEAN this year. Thank you.
Enlargement of ASEAN with reference to the idea of including East Timor or Timor-Leste as a new member when Cambodia tried to join ASEAN in the mid-1990s, a sense that I didn't think that Cambodia was prepared to be a member of ASEAN, and also political and financial reasons. But I would say, well, so far I am, I'm quite impressed with the level of and ability to do its part, but I'm still Timor-Leste because it's a small country. It has a lot of responsibility when you join ASEAN. Competent Timor-Leste would be as part of ASEAN. On the other hand, I would say, learning by trial and error, right? The ASEAN way is quite informed and very elitist in that sense. So this can help Timor-Leste and encouraged to take its responsibility, but again, it's not going to be easy for the country. And but on the other hand, as I said, ASEAN is not a big organization. The ASEAN Secretariat is not a very highly institutionalized secretariat. So it's up to the ASEAN members whether they want to admit Timor-Leste. Feels that it's ready to join. It's not going to be a big problem. Attending a few hundred meetings a year is a challenge. But it's a small country. ASEAN Timor-Leste can do it with some difficulty. But it's not going to be progressing rapidly. So what I would say it will be a big problem. It will pose a big challenge to Timor-Leste. It should be able to manage it slowly. Peacemaking. It's, as I said, it's very difficult for ASEAN to move the role of Cambodia in managing or in trying to help address situation in Myanmar. From what I've read, it's not going very well. That has a lot to do with its non-interference, non-intervention, and things like that. And as long as you have the states that are politically unstable, undemocratic, and repressive, you're going to have a lot of along the way, and you just cannot resolve problems peacefully or even through negotiation. Is still relevant in that sense, but it's not going to go very far, and you will see problem after problem, one way or another. So I don't see how Cambodia, as also a small country, can, in terms of addressing the political situation in Myanmar and the military junta of Myanmar has stubborn and unwilling to compromise, and so the situation can be resolved through diplomatic means, and peacemaking is not as effective in that context. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's my
Thank you, Dr.
short answer.
Sopong. I think we have one more question from our audience here. Please.
My name is Him Desmay from CICP. Once again, I would like to thank you for all speakers for your interesting presentations and panel so far. My question directed to Professor Sopong Po. What are the key and practical reform that ASEAN should do in order to be more responsive to existing and emerging challenges in the regions? Where to start and how to promote more people-centered approach in ASEAN? Thank you, Lukuba.
That is a very good question. I think as long as ASEAN countries, resist the idea of moving toward a more democratically institutionalized organization, especially in the context of regional and global politics. I have written extensive about to come out on global politics or global governance, is that the world is on fire, and not just in Ukraine or Middle East, but also in Northeast Asia. In that sense, cannot remain unaffected. And the rivalry between China and also other democratic countries like Taiwan and Japan and India, the United States on one side and China on the other side, it's going to affect ASEAN tremendous. But I would say that the ASEAN way can weather the storm. But it's not effective. It can stabilize things, but it's not going to move beyond what it is now. The ASEAN can maintain a degree of unity. The problem is politics. Big power competition tend to be more. So I'm worried about the future of ASEAN. Again, ASEAN is that it is moving backward in terms of democracy. In the past, democratic states like Thailand, Philippines, but now, so basically, ASEAN now is of dictators, and what worries me is that dictatorship is not very good through negotiations. You deal with the junta in Myanmar, you see the problems already resolved. So and the role of China. So the rise, I would say, the rise of China has really posed not only to Northeast Asia, but to Southeast Asia as well. So the rise of China, for me, if I had time, I would like to write a piece on the rise of China and the retreat of democracy, because the impact has been huge. And we all know that democracy everywhere in the world. And even people in the West, admire the Chinese political system and economic system in the sense that, China as a superpower in a very short time is almost a miracle. So people say, wow, look at the declining and things like that. So the future of ASEAN doesn't look very good, very promising. The leading proponent of ASEAN as a regional security community the possibility that ASEAN might be kind of organization decadent, decaying, things like that.
Thank you so much.
So tend to be moving in the wrong direction, moving backward.
So to you, ASEAN has a lot to do, have a lot of homework to do.
But it's not doing something new. Keep the old ASEAN way. I know it's important, it's relevant, but it's beyond the ASEAN way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Sopong. Is there any other question from here or online? How we see online questions? Well, yes, please. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Again, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tien Sam Nang, President of the National Institute of Diplomacy and International Relations. Having heard your insights, presentations, and analysis, you see that Asian have diverse cultures, and also in terms of engagement from the superpowers, they are not really focused on the form of governance or form of government like democracy or what just you have mentioned. They approach each Asian member in terms of geostrategy, geoeconomic or geostrategic, something like that. To your opinions, how Asian can promote peace and stability in order to face the pressure or the rivalries between great powers?
Your question is addressing to
yes, my question to both panelists.
So please, Dr. Sopong, and yes, please, maybe Dr. Putsodari, please.
Putsodari, yeah.
Please.
In fact, Dr. Sapapong answered a lot of questions. I remember I put your name in my reference. Thank you, and I see your face online. Thank you very much. Yes, answer to the question regarding the promote peace and political stability in the region. As you can see, Asian influence or hegemony from superpower. As I refer already that there are two types of peace and peacekeeping based on community experience. The first one is community peace. Community peace, as you can see, the Chinese were about the rise, peaceful rise. Within the peaceful right framework, as you can see, China very attractive to the Asian, especially Belt and Road Initiative and other banking system, digital technology, connectivity, and so forth. And again, and you can see the hegemony of neoliberal peace, as I mentioned, that the superpower like United States and also try to put pressure on the Asian to follow democratic system, including democracy, human rights, women, and so forth. So in order to cope with this conflicting ideology between communist ideology, ASEAN should have its own modality of peace, what I call the peace modality use of peace that can be built, for example, in Myanmar. So we do not know what kind of what kind of the positive peace can be built, can be extracted from the Myanmar. I don't see ASEAN had its own modality when the chaos or the conflict, political conflict, can say like you know, the war between Ukraine and Russia. You know, we don't see any modality ready to be used settling down the conflict within the region. So in this case, you can see both economic perspective and also culture. We can see culture, you know, it's already integrated based on the Asian blueprint. It has its own what's called a cultural, political, community, Asian community blueprint, and also the economic is we don't see the peacebuilding or peacemaking model in Asia. So in these cases of experience in Myanmar, although Cambodia become the chair of the Asian, does Myanmar listen to us? Does Myanmar learn from our lesson learned that now we bring peace to Cambodia? It's so difficult because there's a model there. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Putsudari. I think because of time constraints, we have one last question from. Oh yes, please, your ambassador. Please,
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the AVA for organizing this conference. Very meaningful. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Hermenegildo Cupa Lopez, as ambassador of Timor-Leste to the Kingdom of Cambodia. Well, here, I think I would like to highlight here about for regarding Timor-Leste accessing to be a member of ASEAN. Timor-Leste is a part of this Asian region and almost around more than 20 years, but it's still out of ASEAN, out of this region. So the one of all the 10 members of Asian countries, so one of the country who are is not a small country, small population, but big region, Cambodia, have one of very vocal and consistent, and under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Samdech Suu Hussein, and supported Timor-Leste to be a member of ASEAN, because Timor-Leste been waiting for to be a member of ASEAN been very long. We submitted formally our application in 2011. Let's say, and now is 11 years now. It's almost to be a teenager. So recently, my president, Jose Ramos Horta, make a statement in Indonesian Jakarta that is he makes some like a joke, but it's a criteria to be accessed, to be reached, to reach the heaven is much more easier rather than to reach the gates of ASEAN. So hopefully for this year, the next November for Asian Summit will be under Cambodian chairmanship, will be have a Timor-Leste hopefully to be graduate here, then we will celebrate in Jakarta. Can be the married here, then wedding party we will celebrate in Jakarta. for Kampuchea legacy. So what do you think is about for the professor? Will any chance for the same as like in the past Vietnam brought Kampuchea to be a member of ASEAN? Hopefully it will be happen again for Cambodia under Cambodian chairmanship. Timor-Leste will be announced in Cambodia. As I said, that is a merit here. Party will be in Jakarta. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Ambassador, for your last question. And I think because of time constraint, let's thanks to our panelists again, Dr. Pau Sopong. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your experiences. Thank you so much, Dr. Put Sodari, and wish you good health, good luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hand over to MC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pekadai, for moderate these sections, and also thank you to our panelists for sharing a great experience and great discussion for us. So right now, I would like to invite Dr. Chiang Wanarat, the President of AVI and Director of ASEAN Pacific Secretariat of Think Tank 2022, to wrap up today's sections.
Thank you. Thank you all, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished scholars, panelists, distinguished participants online and on-site. This is a great honor and pleasure for the Asian Vision Institute and Think Tank 2022 Asia Pacific Secretariat to organize this first Mekong-Asia Pacific Peace Forum. So this forum is inspired by the vision of Prime Minister Hun Sen. Back in 2019, he tried to promote the concept of Asia Pacific Union. And then 2022, early this year in Seoul, he proposed Mekong-Asia Pacific Initiative and also the Universal Peace Charter. So this is just the first step for us to have this kind of brainstorming, intellectual dialogues in order to solicit inputs to further develop a concrete roadmap to realize the vision of Prime Minister Hun Sen, which is, I think it's kind of ideal, kind of a vision to promote peace cooperation in the region through the people-centered approach, multi-stakeholder partnership, and collaboration. And one of the key pillars of this peace building in this region is food security. So that's why we also include food security in our panel discussion, because as a human being, you need to survive, and food security, food safety is very important. And of course, we also discuss water diplomacy and water security as well in subsequent forums, and also energy security and also climate change security. So those are non-traditional security issues that we need to further kind of develop a conceptual framework and concrete roadmaps in order to build peace and stability in the region. So peace in the Asia Pacific will start from the Mekong regions, and the Cambodia-Laos-Vietnam collaboration as triangle will be the core of the Mekong, and then the Mekong to the ASEAN, and ASEAN to the ASEAN +3 East Asia Summit, and the Asia Pacific community or Asia Pacific Union. So this is a long journey, but we take this first step moving forward. So thank you very much once again for contributing your inputs and insights, and for supporting our vision to build a sustainable peace and prosperity in the Mekong and the Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vanarat, for wrapping up today's sections. So right now, I would like to invite all speakers and moderator, as well as our guests, to come up for a photo section together. Yes, yes. So, on behalf of AVI and Think Tank 2022, I would like to thank you to our panelists and distinguished guests who have joining us through online. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.